Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar where we're going to explore the business health checks that ESS BIZTOOLS has prepared for pharmacies. My name's Peter Towers. I'm the Managing Director of ESS BIZTOOLS. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Let's start by analysing what's going to be included in this process of a business health check for pharmacies. The recording of key performance indicators is a very important part of businesses' processes. It's a combination of key performance indicators and some information which you might have observed in the benchmarking reports prepared by organisations like benchmarking.com. This information is very important for your client's leadership team because it helps them manage the business. Accountants who have concentrated on the preparation of annual accounts and income tax returns, in my experience, rarely get involved in key performance indicators relating to the actual operations of the business. You might see some relative to the actual profit and loss account and the balance sheet of the business. But remember, within your client's business, there may be a number of departments or activities, and they need separate information. And one of the key contributors of that separate information is key performance indicators, which are being prepared within the business. So your clients are potentially preparing these key performance indicators for a wide range of activities. And as I've suggested before, you might not be fully aware of all these. I've been involved in organisations where we were keeping key performance indicators on an hourly basis because we wanted to know what the sales were and how many people were engaged in the business at that same time. And a lot of retailers keep these records because they're using the hour-by-hour sales to help them determine their labour manning. How many people do they need on cash registers at particular times of the day? Could they move those people off the cash registers and put them into stacking or doing other jobs around a store? The most common utilisation of key performance indicators, though, is weekly and monthly, so that this very important information is available. So what's your role in the data that's being prepared for use by the client in their own section of the business? I think these are the questions you should be asking. Is it accurate, and having a look at it? Could improvements be made? But a word of warning, don't go just making improvements or changes without having some consultations. In my experience, sometimes overzealous chief financial officers can change things without any regard to whether the team members understand it or will use it the way it was intended. In other words, have they been trained? Have they been told why the changes were made? I had an experience when I first became the chief financial officer in a listed public company of asking about a dozen foremen whilst they were having smoko one morning on our major meatworks, what they thought of the key performance indicator reports. I really can't repeat here what the responses were, but they weren't very enthusiastic. And they basically showed me what happened to these reports. They showed me the waste paper basket. So I sat down with them at lunchtime and said, This is pretty important information. What don't you like about it? And they didn't understand what it was all about. No one had ever communicated with them. And they didn't really get what the words meant because they'd been drafted by an accountant. So I said, well, this is the intention. This is what we want to know on these half a dozen KPIs. And I explained what KPI meant. What would you call it? How do you want it described? Because it didn't really worry me what it was called. I would explain to the CEO and to our plant manager what changes we'd made, but the information was still going to be calculated the same way. It's just that the foreman wanted it called something else and wanted it described as something else, something that they had a connection with, they understood it. So they were the improvements we made. And then I think we got some understanding what it was all about. They become enthusiastic in recording that information because there was something in it for them as well. But no one had ever explained that to them before. It's quite amazing. So that got back to, is the leadership team confident that the key performance indicators are supplying data that they can use? Unfortunately, the layer of management above the foreman hadn't really asked that question. And does the client's team and leadership team need training on the KPI system? Most certainly. And a week later, I ran a training course for all of the foremen on that particular meatworks to give them a better understanding what the key performance indicators are. So I think if you find similar situation with your clients, sit down and talk to the CEO or the owner and suggest that you run a training course. But also make sure that everyone understands them. These KPIs may have been determined in some of your clients' businesses 20 or 30 years ago, and they've just been hung on to because that's how we do it here, without any real thought as to whether that information is conveying information that is able to be used by the people who are basically preparing the information, but also by the leadership team who should be receiving it. And perhaps there's a job there for you to undertake some training. So let's now look at business health checks for pharmacies. The product package within ESS BIZTOOLS includes a paper we've written on the business health check for pharmacies. And then we go into the pharmacies. And the first component of the Excel spreadsheets we're going to look at is the data collection. And then I'm going to show you the key performance indicator report that we prepare, or the system prepares, so that you can analyze it or your client can analyze it and see what changes they might like to make. So we're just going to go now to share the ESS BIZTOOLS website. So you should now be able to see Business Health Check Pharmacy. So I've removed this from the individual products, which are on the left-hand side of your screen, which is a list of some of the product packages within ESS BIZTOOLS. In total, there are 32 of these product packages. And I've already gone through the business health checks and identified the pharmacy. So that's the pharmacies that we have. Here in the middle and on the right-hand side, you can see that we have a webinar recording. And then we've got some commentary on what's included. So we're going to download that content. And on the screen now, you have the list of what's included in this package. There's a range of information to give it some support. But the information that I want to go to is here. Business Advisory Services Health on Pharmacies. And we have to So on the screen now, you should be able to see the full form. Now, what I brought up for you is the instruction form, which we call instruction for BAS, Business Advisory Services 401. It's giving you some notes on the various terminology that we have utilized in this document. And then if we go into the worksheet, this is a sheet which obviously you complete the details, and it's where the data for the period's going to be collected. So this is not the key performance indicators. This is the basic data that's being collected. How many days did we work in the period? Number of days in the period. Time that work couldn't take place, for what reason, just so that it's recorded. Then we analyze the customers or patients. It's always interesting if you are situated in a shopping center to see if you can find the number of visitors that entered the shopping center. Then you've got the number of visitors to the store. So obviously we're going to calculate when we get to the key performance report, what percentage of the people who entered that shopping center actually entered this pharmacy. Now on its own, that might not mean much, but when it's compared to what happened in the previous week or month, or what the average has been year to date, it can be meaningful. If you're running along at getting 3% each time and suddenly it's only 1%, it's a reasonable question for management to be asking why. If you've been recording 3% for months and suddenly it goes to 7%, it's just as appropriate to ask why. What did we do well that day or that week or that month that got this increase? And can we continue to do it? And did it then reflect in sales? Or were they just wandering around to have a look? Or was it because you had some sort of entertainment going on in the store? Is that what attracted people there? So there could be reasons, but you need to analyze it. And I think as accountants, you need to understand that this sort of information is very important for the leadership team running your businesses. And you've probably never seen this type of information. How many internet sales were made? Have they got a loyalty program? How many of those customers came in? How many prescriptions were processed for institutions? Where did your customers come from? How many new customers do you get? A lot of pharmacies try to record the postcode that people going into their business are from. And this was based on what one of our subscribers was preparing for a chain of about 10 pharmacies. And they wanted to know the postcodes from where their customers come from. What were the sources of inquiries? These were the sort of sources that they were recording. They saw an ad, so that the shop assistant or the pharmacist would ask them, what brought you to our pharmacy today? And hopefully as they answered, they had a sheet they'd entered this on. At the end of the day, it was summarized and inserted in these statistics. How many complaints they get? How many suggestions they receive? Did they have any returns of product? A lot of retailers have phantom customers. Someone that's walking around making everyone think they're a potential customer, but they're in fact writing a report. What was good? What was bad? What improvements could be made? We've got a dissection of sales, cash sales, internet sales, credit sales for debtors, and so on. And then we've got the sales dissection into the various departments that you normally find within a pharmacy. And you can add a few more if you want to. Hours the business was open. Cost of goods sold and gross profit, and then dividing that into the various departments so that we are going to be able to get gross profit percentage for each component of the business. The working hours of principals. This is a very standard benchmarking question, so we've got that in there. The salaries of the working owners. Total hours worked per period by the owners or the principals. Then we go through employees, number of full-time equivalents, and then break the costs again down into these various components, various departments within the business. How many locums did we have? What it cost? The staff numbers dissected into various categories. Total hours worked. Any accidents? What did absenteeism amount to in hours? How many resignations? What staff training was done? What's the size of the property? How many square meters does the business pay rent for? Some information on stock and inventory. Then some balance sheet information. So that would be at the end of the period that you're analysing. Range of information there. We've put the valuation type figures in. You might not have them each time, of course. Expenses. We've then broken down the expenses. Because the owners of the test pharmacy were very interested in seeing a detailed analysis of the percentage each expense represented out of the total turnover. And a lot of the benchmarking reports give you the same information. Now you could set up a benchmarking comparison here because that's what the owners of this particular pharmacy group were wanting done. They had 10 pharmacies, as I said earlier, and they wanted all this information able to be compared. So they were doing their own benchmarking exercise. You could do that for a client that has more than one pharmacy, or you could negotiate with a group of your clients to undertake this type of exercise, a benchmarking exercise for a group of clients, basically in the same area. Obviously, you're going to have to treat the information confidentially, which you could do so, and give them a report back. The benefit of that is it's going to reflect what's happened in that geographical area. It can be a bit more meaningful than a nationwide benchmark report. If you can say that this represents pharmacies in the suburbs of, or in the city of, just has a bit more meaning. Some analysis on insurance covers. Some analysis then on profits. Some analysis on major suppliers. How much did they spend this period? What was it the previous period? Why the changes? So that's the basic information that is obviously extracted from a whole range of other sources, whether it's the financial accounts, the profit and loss account and the balance sheet, or whether it's the payroll information, obviously be ultimately reflected in the profit and loss account, or is it from information that the pharmacy sales staff are collecting, like by asking customers what their postcode is, or by chasing up the centre management and making sure that the number of people who have entered the centre is available to them each day, so that can be recorded. So there's a bit of information goes on in the background here, and it's all brought to account. Now, you might be able to go through this and find out that there's other things happening in a pharmacy, so you could contact us and we'll amend the master document so that that type of information could be recorded. So that's how that works. If we now go to the instructions for the forms, what we're going to get back is the report that's going to look at sales analysis, sales dissection, customer details, gross profit analysis, and so on, because it's collated the information that we have collected. So the worksheet for the report will look like this: the name of the pharmacy, of course, what period's covered, and then it's going to analyze the information. Sales increased or decreased percentage from the previous period. The daily sales were, sales per FTE person. Now, this information should then be compared to what's happened in other periods. And that's when it really starts meaning something. The sales dissection, sales per square meter. On its own, probably doesn't mean anything, but compared to previous periods, it might. But also, some of these industries and trades do look at the benchmarking information. So the client has probably got an idea of what the sales are per square meter when you look at national figures, so they can compare their figure to that and see how they're going. What's the average sale? What's the average sale per internet? How much, what was the percentage of sales made by credit? Dissection of the sales. Customer details, where did they come from? So we've broken down those 10 postcodes. What it might highlight is that we've got a group of fast growing from a postcode that hadn't a few months ago was down at level 10. The obvious leadership question is why? Why does that occur? Why has postcode that was running at number 10 now coming in number 3? What have we done there? It might have meant that the leaflet distribution arrangements have been improved. A lot of pharmacies have leaflets being distributed. And at times there's been some real horror stories about leaflet distribution, whether the leaflets were actually delivered. Maybe there's been a change of management of the leaflet distribution, and suddenly everyone in the postcode that's now recording as 3 have been getting their pamphlets, their brochures, and they've reacted. They've been coming into the pharmacy to buy. That might be good information for the leadership team to have. So first of all, they can congratulate the current management and then perhaps shake up the leaflet distributors in some of the other postcodes if they're not being done by the same firm. It's just raising a range of questions. New customers percentage to total. That's an interesting figure to compare to what's happened previously. Average sale to new customers. This is very important, I think. Shopping centre visitors percentage to customers. What's that work out at? And how does it compare to previous periods? Where did the inquiries come from? What sort of marketing initiative that your client's been undertaking was rewarded by getting customers? The visitors to store, the conversion to customers percentage. percentage of complaints to the total of customers, returns, number of suggestions. What do the phantom customer reports highlight? You know, how many problems? The gross profit percentage of the various components. So all this information is now available. Gross profit analysis. What would have been the break-even sales? And all these calculations are getting prepared within the system. We've embedded them in the system. They will do the calculations and put the figures into the finished report for you. We then have wage percentage. Again, on its own, probably doesn't mean anything, but you then incorporate that into the week by week by week by week comparisons. If there's any fluctuations or variations, it's going to stand out very clearly. And that's when management should be asking questions. Why? Why did this occur? Then we got the expense analysis. Very important for clients to understand the allocation of their sales income to various expenses. Because what they should be asking is, how can we reduce those expenses? So you've got that information readily available. And once the information's inserted in BAS 401, this information is produced. The profitability analysis. Calculating net profit per square metre that the pharmacies are renting and net profit per owner's hours worked in the business. You recall that we inserted that in BAS 401. The staff analysis. What's the staff allocation per working owner? This is a typical question asked in benchmarking reviews. So your client's going to have this information and they could compare that to some of the benchmarking reports. Absenteeism, resignation, staff training, all very important. Then an analysis of suppliers. And looking at the occupancy cost per metre. What productivity was lost because of natural disasters. And then some ratio analysis on stock turn days, debtors days outstanding, Medicare days outstanding, creditors days, current ratio, quick ratio. Then we're going to go into the financial analysis, EBIT percentage on investment. Recall that I said to you before, the investment. It'd be good if you could get that. It doesn't have to be a formal report. It's basically you say to the pharmacy owner, what do you think the business is worth? How much money would you want to receive if someone walked in here now and said they'd like to buy your pharmacy? Maybe that's the investment figure you want to use. And there's some various calculations there, and then all the formulas for each of those have been embedded in the system. You don't have to do the calculations. As long as you put the basic data in on BAS 401, it will be analysed, calculated, and reflected in BAS 501. So that's the way this system works. So it's basically you or your client collects the information and you then process it through this form. So you have a key performance indicator report, which is analysing a whole range of aspects within the business. The real use for this, of course, as I've said earlier, is for the leadership team to be analysing the trends, analysing variations, thinking about how things might be able to be improved. If they see that a particular postcode's increasingly supplying a larger share of the customers, could they conduct more effective marketing in that area to try to see if they can increase the figure further? Or do they think they've now reached the saturation point for the obtaining of potential customers. It's all very interesting, but in lots of ways, you will find that there is a greater emphasis on this sort of information within many of your clients' firms than what it is on reading the profit and loss accounts or balance sheets, because this is where they know that they can have some influence on what's happening in the business. Your role, as I see it, is making sure that the information that's being collated is accurate, because they're making decisions on this. And perhaps finding out whether the key people who are in effect assembling this information appreciate what it's being used for. And there could be a role for you to propose to your client that you run some staff training courses on the collection of this information, what it's being used for, and how it's going to help the business be operated. So that's the business health check component of this overview for you today. I'm just going to now go back to the control form, and I'm going to bring up the paper which we've prepared. You should be able to see that paper there now, Business Advisory Services, Business Health Check Pharmacy. This just gives you an idea of what's included in the paper, which is giving an overview of how this system works. There's not much in that paper because it's talking about the work program and the proposal document, but it will give you an idea of what's being covered to help the client have a better understanding of this process. So we've been through and had a good look at the pharmacy system. I now just want to briefly talk about tools to create opportunities. This is a special promotion which we've been presenting as part of Black Friday and the end of lockdowns, or hopefully the end of lockdowns around Australia. This promotion is for 7 great products. Your investment for 12 months upfront payment is $795, including GST. You get 24/7 access. And this is a great way to introduce a range of diversified services to your firms. Every package has got 7 products, but 4 of them are compulsory. They're key packages that we think should be included in the package that someone's getting if they're going to start to offer business advisory services. So we have the training package, which is 13 modules. We have the Business Plus newsletter, which is produced each month. There's no edition in January, but there's normally 2 extra in May. This year it's going to be, or next year, 2022, it's going to be slightly different. There'll be 1 extra in March because the federal budget's being brought down in March. And we write a newsletter on the federal budget as it affects SMEs. And in May, there is the end of year tax planning edition. You will have 343 papers over 60 categories, which you can badge and send to your client. And we got the SME Needs Analysis, which is, I think, the most important document within ESS BIZTOOLS because it facilitates you having a conversation with your client about the sort of services they'd like to receive from you. And then you pick 3 other products out of 22. So we got the business health checks, and there's the pharmacies that we've just looked at. And then we've got other products: business planning, tradies charge out rates, professional firms charge out rate, charge outs for retail and wholesalers, buying a business, client mentoring and coaching, client seminars and webinars, crowdsourced funding, equity raising, debtors management, early stage innovation company. You pick 3 of these: government grants, leadership modules, the personal property securities register, selling a business, SME debtors systems manual, succession planning and survival in difficult times, which is 42 questionnaires that allows you to analyze in great detail every aspect of the client's business. And allied to that is a set of 42 articles which relate to the various questionnaires, so that you can say to the client, well, here's in effect the responses that we've suggested that you should be looking at to these questions that we have in the questionnaire. It's a document designed to help businesses that suffer from natural disasters or problems in their area. I think it's applicable in an accountant's toolkit, if you like, because you're always going to have some clients who have got some difficulties. So if you need more information on the tools to create opportunities product package, please send me an email, peter@essbiztools.com.au, and we'll send you the brochure, and then you can subscribe. The subscription form is within that package. Our next webinar in this series is on Tuesday, the 7th of December, early stage innovation companies. Now, if you don't know anything about early stage innovation companies, can I respectfully suggest it's about time you found out, because this is really targeted at SMEs. It's targeted at people who have undertaken some research and development. Their turnover is under $200,000 in the previous 12 months. Their expenditures under $1 million for the previous 12 months. They've been doing a research and development type activity, and they've realized they need more money. Where are they going to get it? Well, the government introduced this concept about 3 years ago, and they've put a very big carrot into the legislation to attract investors. The company doesn't get a carrot, they get the money. But the investors get a carrot because they get a tax rebate based on their amount of their investment. There is an upper limit for retail investors. The maximum rebate they receive is $10,000. But for a sophisticated investor, the maximum rebate is calculated at 20% of their investment, up to a maximum rebate of $200,000. So that's obviously calculated on $1 million worth of investment. Doesn't mean they got to stop investing at $1 million, but that's where the rebate runs out. There's a whole set of rules, but there's work there that small, medium-sized accountancy firms can definitely get involved in. But you need to understand it. You've got to be able to talk the talk and convince your client that you do know what it's about. Otherwise, you run the risk of losing smart, young business people who will gravitate to firms who tell them they can do this work. And then normally within a very short period, all of their work has gone to that other firm. I think you should try to keep that work. It's interesting, it's challenging. Your younger accountants will love it. And that might help you in the retention and attraction of young accountants, because you'll be perceived to be undertaking interesting work away from tax all the time. Okay, our contact details, Peter@ESSBizTools is the email. Give me a phone call if you like, 1-800-232-088. And please visit our website and have a look. It's a new website, www.essbiztools.com.au. Thank you for joining us. Stay safe. Have a great day. Goodbye.